A billionaire spent $3 million trying to make his silent son speak. The best doctors in Europe said it was impossible. But then one morning, he heard a sound that shattered everything he believed. His twin boys, who had never spoken a single word in their entire lives, looked at the housekeeper and said one word that broke his heart: "Mama." What happened next will make you question everything you think you know about love, healing, and what truly matters in life. This is a story that will stay with you long after it ends. So stay with me, because what you're about to hear is something everyone needs to understand. Welcome to Reality Untold Stories. While you are here, please hit the subscribe button and comment your view on the story and where you're watching from. Section 1. The House That Forgot How to Smile, 1,000 Words. Let me tell you about a man named David Harper. He lived in London, in a beautiful house that sat quietly in one of the city's wealthiest neighborhoods. David was a real estate developer, the kind of man who built skyscrapers and shopping centers across Europe. His name was on buildings. His face was in business magazines. But inside his grand home, there was something missing. Something that all his success could never buy back.
Joy.
You see, 3 years ago, David's world fell apart. His wife, Elizabeth, died while giving birth to their twin sons, Noah and Ethan. The doctors tried everything, but her heart just stopped. And in that single moment, David lost the woman he loved more than anything in this world. But the pain didn't end there. When the twins were born, the doctors delivered more devastating news. Both boys had severe brain damage. They couldn't walk. They couldn't speak. They could barely move at all. The doctors said their condition was permanent. They said the boys would never understand language, never say a word, never live a normal life. David spent everything trying to prove them wrong. He hired the best neurologists in London, flew in specialists from America and Switzerland. He bought equipment that beeped and hummed through the night, machines that were supposed to help his sons' brains develop. He tried experimental therapies that cost more money than most people earn in a lifetime. Nothing worked. Years passed, and the house became quieter and quieter. David stopped playing music. He stopped having guests over. He built his life around strict schedules and medical routines, believing that if he controlled everything perfectly, maybe something would change. But deep down, he was just trying not to feel the pain that lived in his chest every single day. The staff moved through the house like ghosts, afraid to make noise, afraid to disturb their employer who seemed to carry the weight of the world on his shoulders. The nursery had every toy a child could want, but no laughter ever filled those rooms. The garden had swings that never moved and a sandbox that stayed perfectly smooth because no little hands ever played there. David had built a museum, not a home. Then one morning, everything changed. It was a Tuesday in early autumn. The air was crisp and cool, and fog hung over the London streets like a soft blanket. David was getting ready for work, putting on his expensive suit and checking his watch like he did every morning. He grabbed his briefcase and headed toward the front door. But then he heard something that made him freeze in place. A sound. Small and fragile. Almost like a whisper. "Mama." His briefcase slipped from his hand and hit the marble floor with a soft thud. His heart stopped. His breath caught in his throat. He turned slowly toward the living room, afraid that he was hearing things, afraid that his mind was playing cruel tricks on him. But there it was again. "Mama." David walked toward the sound, his legs shaking. When he reached the doorway, what he saw made tears spring to his eyes. His two sons, Noah and Ethan, were sitting on the soft carpet. Their eyes were fixed on someone kneeling in front of them. It was Rosa, the housekeeper who had started working there just a month ago. She was wearing her simple gray uniform, her hands still in cleaning gloves. Both her arms were stretched out toward the boys, and her voice was gentle and warm as she whispered, "It's okay, my darlings. I'm right here." And then, like a miracle David had stopped believing in, both boys spoke. "Mama," Noah said, his little voice breaking. "Mama," Ethan repeated, reaching toward Rosa with trembling hands. David couldn't move. He couldn't breathe. For 3 years, doctors had told him this was impossible. Therapists had said his son's brains couldn't process language. He had accepted that he would never hear their voices. But now, in his own living room, the impossible was happening right in front of his eyes. And they were calling the housekeeper Mama. Rosa didn't see him standing there. Her attention was completely on the boys. She spoke to them softly, carefully, like she was afraid one wrong word might break the magic. "That's right, sweetheart. You can do it. Say it again for me." David's chest felt tight. His mind raced with 1,000 questions. How did this happen? What did she do? Why was it working for her when nothing else had worked for 3 years? He stepped backward quietly, not wanting to disturb the moment. The door closed behind him with a gentle click, but that single word kept echoing in his mind. Mama. He walked down the long hallway, his footsteps silent on the expensive carpet. The walls were decorated with paintings and photographs of happier times, but David barely saw them anymore. For the first time in years, he felt something crack open inside his chest. It wasn't just pain. It was something else. Something he couldn't quite name yet. He went to his office and sat behind his large wooden desk, but he couldn't focus on work. All he could think about was the image of his sons reaching for Rosa, their eyes full of something he hadn't seen in them before. Life. That evening, David couldn't eat dinner. He couldn't return phone calls. He couldn't do anything except sit in his study and wonder what was happening in his own home. And one question kept repeating in his mind, over and over again. How did a simple housekeeper do what the best doctors in the world couldn't do? He didn't know it yet, but he was about to discover something that would change everything he believed about healing, about love, and about what truly matters in life. The next morning came slowly. The London sky was gray and heavy with clouds that promised rain. David had barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard that word again. Mama. He saw his sons reaching out with hope in their eyes, something he thought they had lost forever. He sat at the breakfast table, staring at a cup of tea that had gone cold. The house staff moved around him quietly, careful not to disturb him. But David's mind was somewhere else entirely. When Rosa walked into the dining room carrying fresh linens, David looked up. She was a woman in her 50s, with kind eyes and dark hair pulled back neatly. There was nothing extraordinary about her appearance, but something about her presence felt warm and genuine. "Rosa," David said, his voice careful and measured. "May I speak with you for a moment?" She stopped, looking slightly surprised. "Of course, sir," she said softly. David gestured to the chair across from him, but Rosa remained standing, her hands folded in front of her apron. Old habits, he thought. She was used to keeping her distance. "Please," he said again, more gently this time. "Sit down." She did, though she looked uncomfortable doing it. David studied her face for a long moment, trying to find the right words. "Yesterday morning," he began slowly, "I saw something I didn't think was possible. I heard my sons speak. Both of them. For the first time in their lives." Rosa's expression softened, but she didn't look surprised. "They said a word," David continued, his throat tightening. "They called you Mama. How did you make that happen?" Rosa looked down at her hands, then back at him. Her voice was quiet but steady. "I didn't make anything happen, sir. They did it themselves." "That's not an answer," David said, trying to keep his frustration in check. "You must have done something. My sons have had the best therapists, specialists, equipment. Nothing worked. What did you do differently?" Rosa took a slow breath before answering. "I talked to them, sir. Every single day. I read them stories. I sang to them. When they seemed scared or restless, I held their hands. I told them they mattered. Maybe they just needed to feel safe enough to try." David shook his head slightly. "Safe? After everything I provided for them, you think they weren't safe?" "I think there's a difference between being protected and feeling loved, sir," Rosa said gently. "Sometimes children need more than just care. They need to feel like someone truly sees them." Her words hit David harder than he expected. He wanted to argue, to defend all the years he had spent trying to help his sons. But deep down, a part of him knew she was right. He had provided everything except the one thing they needed most: presence. David's voice was quieter when he spoke again. You were hired to clean and help around the house. I didn't ask you to work with my children. I know, sir, Rosa said, lowering her eyes respectfully. I'm sorry if I overstepped. I couldn't walk past them every day and not try to connect. They're beautiful souls trapped in bodies that won't cooperate. I thought maybe if someone just kept trying, something might change. David sat back in his chair, his mind racing. He didn't know what to say. Finally, he spoke firmly. From now on, tell me before you do anything with my sons. I need to know what's happening with them. Yes, sir, Rosa said quietly. She stood and left the room, leaving David alone with his thoughts. For the rest of the day, David couldn't concentrate on work. He sat in his office reviewing contracts and plans for a new development in Manchester, but the words on the pages meant nothing. His mind kept drifting back to what Rosa had said. Sometimes children need more than just care. That afternoon, David asked one of the nurses to bring Noah and Ethan to the playroom. It was a large, bright space filled with soft mats, colorful toys, and special equipment designed for children with disabilities. David rarely spent time there. It reminded him too much of everything his sons couldn't do. But today was different. When the nurse wheeled the twins in, David stood from where he'd been sitting by the window. Hello, boys, he said, trying to keep his voice light and warm. Daddy's here. Neither boy reacted. They stared ahead blankly, the way they always did. David knelt down beside Noah and gently touched his small hand. It was warm and soft, but there was no response. No squeeze, no movement, nothing. Can you hear me? David whispered, searching his son's face for any sign of recognition. Still nothing. The nurse spoke quietly behind him. They've been like this all morning, sir. Very quiet. Rosa usually stays with them during this time, but she's working in another part of the house today. David felt something twist in his chest. Bring her here, he said. Sir, bring Rosa here. Now. The nurse nodded and left quickly. A few minutes later, Rosa appeared in the doorway, looking concerned. Is everything all right, sir? She asked. But before David could answer, something extraordinary happened. Noah's eyes shifted. His head turned slightly toward Rosa's voice. Ethan's fingers twitched on the armrest of his wheelchair. Both boys seemed to wake up from wherever they had been locked inside their own minds. Rosa smiled gently and walked closer. Hello, my darlings, she said softly. Both boys' faces changed. Their eyes brightened. Ethan made a small sound in his throat, almost like a coo. Noah's mouth curved into something that almost looked like a smile. David watched in stunned silence. The nurse beside him whispered, They never do that for anyone else, sir. Rosa knelt between the twins and began humming a simple melody. It wasn't a song David recognized, just a gentle, rhythmic tune that seemed to calm the entire room. Noah made another sound, trying to match her rhythm. Ethan's hand reached out slightly, his fingers opening and closing like he was trying to grab hold of something invisible. David's eyes filled with tears. Do you see now, sir? Rosa said quietly, looking up at him. They can respond. They understand more than we know. They just need patience, not pressure. David couldn't speak. His throat was too tight. All he could do was nod. Rosa looked back at the boys. You're doing so well, my loves, she whispered. So well. And in that moment, David realized something that changed everything. His sons didn't need another doctor. They needed to be seen, truly seen for who they were. And Rosa saw them. That night, David couldn't sleep. He lay in his bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the sound of rain tapping against the windows. The house felt different now. The silence that had once been heavy and suffocating now felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. David kept replaying the moment in the playroom over and over in his mind. The way his son's eyes had lit up when Rosa entered the room. The way they tried to make sounds for her. The way they reached out, even though their bodies barely cooperated. For 3 years, he had believed his sons were unreachable. Now he knew the truth. They weren't unreachable. He just hadn't known how to reach them. The next morning, David did something he hadn't done in a long time. Instead of leaving early for the office, He went straight to the nursery. The door was slightly open, and he could hear Rosa's voice inside, soft and melodic. He pushed the door open quietly and stopped. Rosa was sitting on the floor between the twins' beds, singing. The morning light streamed through the curtains, making the room glow. Noah and Ethan were both awake, watching her with wide, focused eyes. The song she was singing made David's breath catch. He knew that song. It was a lullaby his wife Elizabeth used to hum every night when she was pregnant with the twins. She would sit in the rocking chair by the window, her hands on her belly, and hum that same melody. David had forgotten all about it. He thought it was lost forever, buried with all the other memories of Elizabeth that hurt too much to remember. But here it was, alive again in Rosa's voice. "Where did you learn that song?" David asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Rosa turned, startled. She hadn't heard him come in. "I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean to wake you." "You didn't," David said, stepping into the room. "That song, where did you learn it?" Rosa reached beside her and picked up a small, worn notebook. She held it out to him. "I found this a few weeks ago," she said softly. "It was tucked behind some books on the shelf. I think it belonged to your wife." David's hands trembled as he took the notebook. He recognized it immediately. Elizabeth had carried it everywhere during her pregnancy, writing down thoughts, ideas, and plans for the future she thought she would have. He opened it carefully. The pages were filled with Elizabeth's handwriting, neat and slanted. There were notes about baby names, lists of things to buy, and sketches of the nursery layout. Near the middle, he found a section titled Lullabies for My Boys. And there, written in blue ink, were the words to the song Rosa had been singing. At the bottom of the page, Elizabeth had written something that made David's eyes blur with tears. "If I'm not there to sing to them, I hope someone will. Music is love you can hear." David's chest tightened. He closed the notebook slowly and looked at Rosa. "You've been singing this to them?" "Yes, sir," she said quietly. "I thought maybe hearing their mother's words would comfort them. I didn't know if it would help, but I wanted to try." David knelt beside the twins' beds. Noah and Ethan were both looking at him now, their eyes alert and curious. For the first time in years, David felt like his sons could actually see him. "Keep singing," he said to Rosa, his voice thick with emotion. "Please." Rosa nodded and began the lullaby again, her voice gentle and sure. As she sang, something beautiful happened. Noah's mouth began to move, trying to shape the sounds. His lips formed small, broken syllables that didn't quite connect, but the effort was there. Ethan's hand reached out toward Rosa, his tiny fingers stretching as far as they could go. David watched, unable to look away. His heart felt like it was breaking and healing at the same time. When the song ended, Rosa looked at the twins and whispered, "You did so well, my darlings. So well." Noah made a sound. It was small and unclear, but it was intentional. He was trying to respond. David covered his face with his hands. The tears he had been holding back for years finally came, and he didn't try to stop them. Rosa placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "It's okay to cry, sir," she said softly. "Sometimes tears are just love that has nowhere else to go." David nodded, unable to speak. Later that day, after he had composed himself, David made a decision. He called his assistant and told her to clear his schedule for the rest of the week. For the first time in 3 years, he was going to be home. Really home. Not just physically present, but actually there. He spent the afternoon in the nursery, watching Rosa work with the boys. She read to them from picture books, her voice patient and unhurried. She played simple games, encouraging them to follow her movements with their eyes. She sang, over and over, the songs from Elizabeth's notebook. And slowly, bit by bit, the twins began to respond more and more. By evening, Noah had made several sounds. They weren't words yet, but they were progress. Ethan had reached out 3 different times, each time getting a little closer to Rosa's hand. David felt something he hadn't felt in a very long time. Hope. That night, he sat in his study holding Elizabeth's notebook. He read through every page, remembering the woman he had loved, the life they had planned, and the dreams they had shared. At the very end of the notebook, Elizabeth had written one final message. David, if you're reading this, it means I'm not there. But please remember, love is stronger than any diagnosis. Don't give up on our boys. They will find their way. They just need someone to believe in them. David closed the notebook and whispered into the quiet room, I'm sorry I stopped believing, Elizabeth. But I see them now. I finally see them. And somewhere, in the room down the hall, two little boys slept peacefully, dreaming dreams that were slowly learning how to become real. A week passed, and the house continued to transform. David had never noticed how quiet his home had been until it started to come alive. Now there were small sounds everywhere. The soft hum of Rosa's voice. The gentle coo of the twins trying to communicate. The rustle of pages as Rosa read stories. The creak of the rocking chair as she sang. David found himself coming home earlier each day, eager to see what small miracle might happen next. His business partners noticed the change. His assistant commented that he seemed lighter somehow, less burdened. But inside, David was wrestling with something complicated. He was grateful for what Rosa was doing, but he also felt a strange ache in his chest every time the twins responded to her. They lit up when she entered a room. They calmed at the sound of her voice. And yes, they had called her Mama. Not him. Not Daddy. Her. It was a Tuesday evening when the storm came. The London sky had been threatening rain all day, and by dinner time, the clouds finally broke. Thunder rolled across the city, and rain pounded against the windows like drumbeats. David was in his study reviewing financial reports when he heard footsteps in the hallway. It was Rosa, moving quickly toward the nursery. He followed her. When he reached the doorway, he saw her kneeling beside the twins' beds. Noah and Ethan were both awake, their small faces scrunched with worry. The thunder boomed again, and both boys flinched. "Show my darlings," Rosa whispered, placing a gentle hand on each of their chests. "It's just rain. You're safe. I'm right here." David leaned against the doorframe, watching. The storm outside grew louder, lightning flashing through the curtains and casting quick shadows across the room. Rosa began to sing. It was that same lullaby from Elizabeth's notebook, but this time her voice competed with the thunder. She sang louder, her voice strong and unwavering, like she was building a wall of sound to protect the boys from their fear. And then, in the middle of the storm, it happened. Noah's mouth opened, and he made a sound that was clearer than anything David had ever heard from him before. S.A. The name was broken and rough, but it was there. A real word. A real name. Rosa's eyes filled with tears. She covered her mouth with her hand, whispering, "Oh, sweetheart. Yes. I'm Rosa. I'm right here." Ethan tried next. His little voice strained with effort. S.A. Both boys had spoken. Not just sounds, but an actual name. David felt his legs weaken. He grabbed the doorframe to steady himself. 3 years of silence, shattered in a single moment during a storm. Rosa didn't see him. She was completely focused on the twins, encouraging them gently. "That's it, my loves. You're doing so well. So well." But David couldn't watch anymore. The emotions were too much, too overwhelming. He turned and walked quickly down the hallway, his heart pounding in his chest. He went to his bedroom and sat on the edge of his bed, his head in his hands. The rain continued to hammer against the window, and the thunder rolled like an angry drumbeat. Why couldn't they say his name? Why didn't they reach for him the way they reached for Rosa? For a long time, David sat there in the dark, letting the hurt wash over him. He had provided everything for his sons. He had spent his fortune trying to help them. He had restructured his entire life around their needs. But Rosa, who had been in their lives for only a few weeks, had reached them in ways he never could. A soft knock came at his door. "Sir?" It was Rosa's voice, gentle and careful. David quickly wiped his eyes. "Come in." Rosa entered slowly, her expression filled with concern. "The boys are asleep now," she said. "The storm is passing." David nodded but didn't speak. Rosa hesitated, then took a step closer. "Sir, I saw you in the hallway. I think I think I know what you're feeling. Do you? David's voice came out harder than he intended. Yes, Rosa said simply. You're wondering why they respond to me and not to you. David looked up at her, and the pain in his eyes was impossible to hide. They said your name. They've never said mine. They never will they? Rosa shook her head slowly. That's not true, sir. They will. But you have to understand something. The reason they responded to me first is because I was the first person who expected nothing from them. David frowned. What do you mean? Rosa sat down carefully on the chair near the door. When I came into their lives, I didn't see them as broken. I didn't see them as problems to solve. I just saw two beautiful boys who needed someone to talk to them like they mattered. No therapy goals. No medical expectations. Just presence. She paused, choosing her words carefully. You love your son, sir.
I can see that.
But I think you've been so focused on fixing them that you forgot to just be with them. David felt those words sink deep into his chest. I thought I was helping them. You were, Rosa said gently. But healing isn't just about medicine and therapy. It's about connection. And connection requires us to let go of control and just be present. The room fell quiet. Outside, the storm was finally easing. The thunder grew distant, and the rain softened to a gentle patter. They will say your name, sir, Rosa said softly. But first, they need to know you're not trying to fix them anymore. They need to know you love them exactly as they are. David's throat tightened. I do love them. Then show them, Rosa said. Not with doctors and equipment. Show them with your presence. With your time. With your voice reading them stories and singing them songs, even if you think you sound terrible. David let out a small, broken laugh. I do sound terrible. Rosa smiled. Then you'll fit right in. We're all just doing our best. She stood and moved toward the door. Before leaving, she turned back. Tomorrow morning, come sit with them. Not as their father trying to fix them. Just as David wanted to spend time with his sons. That's all they need. After she left, David sat in the quiet room for a long time. And for the first time in 3 years, he knew exactly what he needed to do. The next morning, David woke up before dawn. The city was still quiet, wrapped in that soft darkness that comes just before sunrise. He dressed simply, not in his usual business suit, but in comfortable clothes, a sweater, and casual trousers. Today wasn't about being a businessman, or even trying to be the perfect father. Today was just about being there. He walked down the hallway to the nursery. The door was slightly open, and soft light glowed from the lamp inside. When he pushed it open, he found Rosa already there, preparing the boys for the day. Good morning, sir, she said, surprised to see him so early. Good morning, David replied. He took a deep breath. I'd like to spend the morning with them, if that's all right. Rosa smiled warmly. Of course, sir. That would be wonderful. She showed him how to position the boys comfortably, how to support their heads, and where to place pillows so they could see and hear better. Then she stepped back, giving David space. For a moment, David didn't know what to do. He looked at Noah and Ethan, and they looked back at him with curious eyes. Hello, boys, he said softly. It's Daddy. I know I haven't been around much, but I'm here now. Neither boy reacted immediately, and David felt a familiar pang of disappointment. But then he remembered Rosa's words. Expect nothing. Just be present. So, he sat down on the floor between their beds and picked up one of the books Rosa had been reading to them. It was a simple story about animals in a forest. David opened it and began to read, his voice uncertain at first, then growing stronger. As he read, he noticed something small but significant. Ethan's eyes were following the pictures. Noah's head tilted slightly, like he was listening carefully. David kept reading, page after page. When he finished the first book, he picked up another. Then another. An hour passed, then 2. Rosa brought him tea, and quietly left. David barely noticed. He was completely absorbed in this simple act of being with his sons. Around mid-morning, something extraordinary happened. David was reading a story about a little boy and his father when Noah made a sound. It was soft, but clear. Dad. David froze. His heart stopped. He looked at Noah, afraid to believe what he'd heard. "Did you?" David whispered. Noah's mouth moved again, working hard to form the sound. "Duh." Tears sprang to David's eyes. His hand trembled as he reached out and gently touched Noah's cheek. "Yes, son. I'm Dada. I'm right here." And then Ethan joined in, his voice small and strained but unmistakable. "Dada?" Both boys had said it. Both of them. David couldn't hold back anymore. He leaned forward and gently kissed each of their foreheads, tears streaming down his face. "I love you," he whispered. "I love you both so much. I'm so sorry it took me so long to really see you." Rosa appeared in the doorway, drawn by the sound of David's crying. When she saw what was happening, her own eyes filled with tears. "They said it," David told her, his voice breaking. "They called me Dada." Rosa smiled through her tears. "Of course they did. They were just waiting for you to meet them where they are." From that day forward, everything changed in the Harper house. David restructured his entire life. He promoted his deputy to handle more of the day-to-day business operations. He started working from home 3 days a week. He spent mornings and evenings in the nursery, reading, singing, and just being with Noah and Ethan. The progress was slow, but steady. The boys began making more sounds, attempting more words. Their smiles came more easily. They started reaching out more often, their small hands grasping for the people they loved. Rosa continued her work, but now she worked alongside David. She taught him the songs from Elizabeth's notebook. She showed him how to read to the boys in a way that engaged them. She helped him understand that healing doesn't happen on a schedule. One afternoon, about 2 months after that stormy night, David received a letter. It was from a prestigious children's hospital in Edinburgh. They had heard about Rosa's work with the twins and wanted to offer her a position as a specialized care coordinator. The salary was substantial, and the opportunity was significant. David brought the letter to Rosa that evening. "This is an incredible opportunity," he said, handing it to her. "You'd be helping so many more children." Rosa read it carefully, then looked up at him. "What do you think I should do, sir?" David smiled sadly. "I think you should do what's right for you. You've already given my sons so much. I can never repay that." Rosa folded the letter and handed it back to him. "I appreciate the offer, sir, but I think I'm exactly where I need to be." David's eyes widened. "You're staying?" "If you'll have me," Rosa said simply. "These boys still have a long journey ahead. And honestly, sir, so do you. I'd like to be here for all of it." David felt his throat tighten with emotion. "Rosa, you're not just the housekeeper anymore. You're family. If you stay, I want it to be as a permanent guardian and caregiver for the boys. With your own room in the family wing. With a proper salary. With respect and recognition for what you've done." Rosa's eyes filled with tears. "Sir, I don't know what to say." "Say yes," David replied. "Please." Rosa smiled and nodded. "Yes. Of course, yes." That evening, as the sun set over London, David sat in the nursery with Rosa, Noah, and Ethan. The boys were playing with soft toys, making small sounds of delight. Rosa was humming one of Elizabeth's lullabies. And David was simply there, present and grateful. Noah looked up at him and smiled. "Dada," he said clearly. "Love you," Ethan added, the 2 words clumsy but beautiful. David's heart swelled so full he thought it might burst. "I love you too, boys. So, very much." Later, after the twins had fallen asleep, David stood by the window looking out at the London skyline. Rosa came to stand beside him. "Thank you," David said quietly. "For everything. For not giving up on them when I had stopped trying." Rosa shook her head. "You never stopped trying, sir. You just needed to learn that sometimes love is the strongest medicine we have." David nodded, understanding finally settling deep in his soul. His sons would never be what the world considered normal. They would always need extra care, extra patience, extra support. But they were no longer silent. They were no longer unreachable. They were loved, and they knew it. And in the end, that was all that mattered.